wake up early, as every morning of your life, ready for work. You take the bus, your car, or plane, with a strong belief that you will pick up incoming calls, write your best speech, close the merge your company needs, that you will build, teach, deliver a package, fix, cook, invest, you name it. But have you ever stopped and thought that whatever you do for a living, no matter how you slice it, you are doing marketing?
I think that is a significant change in the human state.
Some people do stupid things with them, some people do amazing things with them.
Most marketing people spend most of their time in the business of doing business.
And the unconscious, many times we buy something and we're really driven by forces we aren't conscious of ourselves.
Companies and brands are sharing power with consumers. And
because there are just more forces out there that are trying to tear down the image of most companies.
In fact, I think if you're in marketing out there now, get out straight away.
Marketing is changing. Obviously, it is a citizen of the world we live in, a world in flux. Down from the kingdom of its inaccessible yet invisible tower, it is now the layman behind us, next to us, inside each and every one. Yes, maybe marketing, just like information, is getting more democratized day after day. But do you realize what that really means? Have you seized in its full dimension the impact this change has on your work, your choices, your decisions, your career? Really? Haven't you noticed that you can't avoid marketing?
I don't think we do a good enough job understanding the present. We don't do a good enough job understanding how we've changed today.
If you watch how marketing is done and how a new product is launched and all the collateral material and the ads that have to be put out and reaching retailers and then final customers, you'll see a lot of waste. You'll see a lot of committee work, a lot of redoing and so on.
The other thing is we're imprisoned by this word selling, because everyone has bad examples of the telemarketer who calls them at home when they're trying to eat their meal and tries to sell them something. We know about ways in which selling is cheating and lying and stealing. So these bad low-level experiences have given a bad reputation.
Oftentimes, I find people are 10 and 15 years behind the trends. They're operating on a picture in their head of the way society is rather than how it's really changed.
When marketing had control of the channel, you could develop a marketing plan. But I think now marketing has to become something that is defined by analytics, and I think it's also something that's defined by social participation.
if you buy that basic logic, then increasingly the ways in which consumers are shaping their attitudes, the way in which they are determining their own behaviors with respect to brands, is increasingly being shaped by consumers' interaction with one another.
And so I really believe that the relationship you have with brands comes from the bottom up. It comes from where you were born, your environment, your education, the values of your society. So I think people do respond differently.
So the world of marketing is now going to be much, much closer to a partnership with the people that you want to market to. Will be from the grassroots back up, by being a member of the society of customers rather than somebody marketing straight to them.
In fact, I think if you're in marketing out there now, get out straight away, redefine yourselves. I think consumers are not going to be marketed at anymore.
With this flurry of discussion taking place, it may seem obvious, even naive to believe, to suggest that in this hyper-connected century, somebody could ever elude, live, without the more and the less visible manifestations of marketing. Unless you are a castaway on a remote island, of course, or a coffee harvester in the tropics, maybe a mailman in a city, just giving your best, doing your job, earning your living. Nothing to do with the fancy face of that marketing stuff. And I mean, nothing, right?
Do you know that gets repetitious, that gets boring, that's very static? The alternative is to go to narration and storytelling, where that brand becomes part of your life and you like to know what its history has been and where it is today.
If you start to sell a brick, it's very boring, it's a commodity, it's only worth $1. If instead you sell the dream of creating the perfect home for you and your partner and your family, wow, that's a different emotional promise.
But I realized that we didn't have to speculate about the way, about what tomorrow is going to bring. We didn't have to, just resort to good stories or anecdotes or examples. We actually had sort of, broad statistical evidence that the internet was changing our culture and our economy.
And suddenly the technology isn't in the vehicle, the technology is in you. That's a change in the way all technologies work, and that can happen in homes, that can happen in markets, that can happen in post offices, and that can happen in apartments.
A lot of marketing research is now becoming ethnographic with cameras in the home, and so marketing research is also moving in another direction, which is getting at the emotions and the unconscious. Many times we buy something and we're really driven by forces we aren't conscious of ourselves.
Precisely what you're saying, which is that something can be brought around the world in a matter of seconds. There are no local stories anymore. All stories are global, and it means you're going to need more thought to this, you're going to need more personnel, and you're going to have to do more proactively on your image because there are just more forces out there that are trying to tear down the image of most companies.
And you're waiting for new things to happen. And you're using metaphors, you're using events, you're distributing it through conversations on the internet, and before you know it, the brand becomes a story that you feel is almost personal.
Do I like them? Do I trust them? Do I believe in them? Do I love them?
From customers to voters, from brands to political parties, from manufacturers to craftsmen, from ideas to experiences, retailers to corner shops. Rather than seeing marketing as the label of a particular discipline, we are starting to apprehend, whether you like it or not, its core potential as the essence of any human enterprise, as the engine setting the workforce into motion, as the nutshell enclosing any contemporary picture of business, perhaps the fire beneath the embers of the whole economic system.
Some people would wake up in the morning dreaming about a new algorithm or a new circuit or a new science. And I think now the people who dream about a new opera or a new business or a new internet service are becoming prominent. And really those are social and economic changes. So there is a shift in the direction of our thought.
Because value is not a literal thing, it's not just money. It's an equation of money, performance, and something more than that, right? Something that is touching to your heart. Maybe it's something that does good for the environment, or you do something good for children, or it makes you just feel beautiful and terrific.
But that's not the ultimate question. The ultimate question is an experience that drives dollars to the top line, profits to the bottom line, in ways that actually benefit us strategically as a business organization. And experience then becomes something that is not in the metaphor of theater or opera or entertainment or theme parks.
And then I noticed that economics pay no attention to anything but price. They never modeled the effect of advertising and promotion. They never modeled the effect of sales force. because they couldn't quantify it enough. And so there was a big gap in what I would call market economics.
In the past, a discipline like marketing, we had a lot of knowledge. We had a lot of measurement, things that were teachable. And because of that, we could mount programs to give people qualifications. But we produce marketing graduates because we have marketing knowledge that the academics can teach.
Well, I don't know what they understand, but I do have a sense of what they're teaching. And they're typically not teaching this, which is a shame, because I think economics is the best lens through which to observe these changes. Economics is really just, the study of incentives and how people behave under incentives.
Which is in that realm of all of those interactions that make up our attitudes and behaviors, or shape consumer attitudes and behaviors about brand. What's the right set of stimuli to create the attitudes and behaviors that drive revenues and profitability?
So, but you got to have a theory. I think you've got to have a team of market researchers who really are combing through and looking for new opportunities. I find that people are trying to simplify things so much down to just one thing. If we just get the one thing right, and it's a complex world out there. It's time to understand that it's multifaceted, and you've got to focus on its many facets.
A mystical notion that conjures up the most varied images and recollections of modern human history. Threatened by overexposure, both wounded and reloaded by the subsequent waves of new technologies, so many times crucified, dead and buried. You may take the word off all boards, cards, off all organizational maps, leaving no one in charge. But, as if driven by an almighty force, marketing can always be fruitful and multiply. In the beginning, men ate freely from every tree of God's heavenly planet. Then, to meet their needs, they had to exchange products and goods in the form of straightforward gift-giving, until self-sufficiency of trade became the rule on earth and subdued it. And then there were prices, and the market was born, an original local institution, a social system supplying human material needs. And God saw it was good.
Traditional definition of economics is the science of choice under scarcity. The scarcity terms turn to zero in the economics equations, and you get divided by zero errors. It's not a good framework for understanding that. Now you can expand your definitions of economics to behavioral economics, and then it gets easier.
It used to be, the business model was, you make a great product, and the product has tremendous value to the customer. All the value is in the product.
And before you know it, all products will have to become good, because bad products will be known instantly. And good is not good enough.
There are so many products and so much competition that your product isn't very different from a competitor's product. And so what has to happen now?
I'm beginning to think now that the stability that we associated with products is gone. And so if you try to base your business on a product that you think will last a long time, then I suspect you're likely to be in trouble, because society will change more rapidly.
50 years ago, you could say, my God, anyone who had supply could find a customer. People were desperate for product the minute they had money to buy.
Let me give you an example. A long time ago in the early 1970s, we were working on how to display text, how to display high quality text on a computer. Over the course of the years, that changed from personal computing, and it grew into the technologies of pictures and music and sounds and movies. And then it grew beyond that into the technologies of building communication systems and environments and sensing.
But we're going to reach the end of demand at some point.
Many of the forces that are determining the new culture fall outside of the definition of traditional economics.
From the start, the paramount importance of consumption had been fundamental, and from the ribs of the small neighboring village, customers were created, and needs were taken beyond daily provisions. Then someone said, "Let us make them in our image, after our likeness," and a new attitude will revolutionize economy. And that revolutionary element will be called marketing.
Well, I think it's partly history. Usually, sales comes first. A small company, as it grows, has some salespeople, and one day somebody says, "We need a brochure. We need to do some advertising." And marketing starts as a sales support function.
Because marketing definitely meant sales when it was first used. And then it started to mean more than promoting an existing product, it meant 4 Ps.
And that is, if you will, a model of marketing that is very much from the supply side or the company side out toward the customer. We define what we're going to sell, we figure out how we're going to price it, we determine the promotional plan, and then we push it into marketing channels.
But very soon, marketing becomes interested in big things, segmentation. It becomes interested in branding. And these things are not very measurable, but very strategic.
And we look at that as marketing 1.0 because it's really about a distribution platform. It's a model that says that we at corporate headquarters who control the supply need to make the product available in ways that are accessible to consumers in all the places they want us to be.
In the Ford economy, the whole drive towards manufacturing was standardization. You could have any color Model T you wanted as long as it was black. Revolutionizing consumers' ability to get products by standardizing them into a single product.
But it's basically a model that's defined by corporate power and the lack of any kind of power or clout on the part of consumers or retailers.
In those earlier times, when the marketing ecosystem was void and formless, a miscellany of unclassified subjects eagerly crept up onto the driving categories of this new force. And advertising, salesmanship, market research, sales management, branding started to make the world go round. By then, Philip Kotler, one of the founding fathers and author of the best pages in the marketing Bible, made a division in the history of the discipline, and starting with fundamentals such as the 4 Ps, every sort of thing in and around market and customers was given a name.
Many of us have taught in business schools, what's taught in MBA curricula to this day, is really designed around that model, the famous model of the 4 Ps. Of the essence of marketing is putting together a marketing mix that is defined by product, promotion, price, and of course distribution or place.
So that was the second stage. The third stage was segmentation, targeting, and positioning. You're not dealing with a mass market anymore. It has pieces to it and segments, so you want to go after the right ones.
I always think you're looking at the overall trends. How are ages changing? How are tastes changing? Is there a big move to the environment? Something like that.
Because up to now, we were only thinking of a transaction. But now we're in the relationship stage, which is to build not only good, loyal customers, but loyal partners.
First of all, you start with trust, you start with quality, you start with all the normal stuff you get taught at MBA school or Marketing 101 from Mr. Kotler, and then you infuse mystery, sensuality, and intimacy, and then you watch it become a love mark.
And the fifth stage is brand new, and that is companies are thinking about co-marketing with their customers. That is not just making something and seeing if they're interested, but having them help us make what they would be interested in.
And after product, place, price, and promotion were kind of dismissed as being old-fashioned. The P's became C's, and convenience, cost to the user, communication, customer needs and wants ruled over the earth.
And this idea of, moving from sort of a bullhorn where you're shouting out messages to ones where you're trying to stimulate, an organic conversation amongst consumers is very tricky, because if it looks like you're pulling the strings, it won't be authentic. This quest for authenticity.
I think that you're seeing products really now being marketed in ways that they have to touch all of the different communities to be truly successful, and I think that's what successful marketers are doing.
Today, selling is much more about strategy, about planning, about understanding customers, and about being creative.
Understanding the customer well enough to know how the customer sees value.
You just can't go by your gut, you just can't go by the numbers either. You have to have a good theory, and the numbers have to really back it up. So I really kind of try to look at the numbers, I try to look at the developments, I try to get out the magnifying glass, and I try to come up with a lot of theories about how people are acting and what's new.
Which means that salespeople today have to understand not just the products, they have to understand customers, the customer's business, the customer's finances.
If you really buy the argument that consumers have the power, then it's not return on product, it's not return on ad budget, it's not return on technology. It's how do you give the customer a better return on herself by dint of the fact that she gave you her business and not your competitor.
I was satisfied with an expression to remind people what it really is, and I call it CCDVTP. So what is marketing? It is creating, communicating, and delivering value to a target market at a profit.
There isn't a new idea there. There's just old, existing ideas that are finally being executed well, so that they have the impact that we thought they would have all along.
But while historical accounts may lead us to conclude that marketing has always existed, I wonder if it is true that it is the mere application of new names to old practices. Why is it that marketing, its theories and its advocates, seem to be always under scrutiny and, at the same time, blindly worshipped as holy scriptures? Rising from factual and conceptual bases to higher levels of generalization and integration, the character of marketing thought has been determined not only by hard data from reality, but by the subjective elements that, from time immemorial, far beyond memory, record, or tradition, have influenced the viewpoints of man.
I think marketing is being replaced by connectors. It was Steve Jobs at Apple that said creativity is just connecting stuff.
There are brands that are loved by people, and if that love affair is continued through various activities, events, and communications, and not through advertising and so on, then the brand strength can be preserved without the old mass advertising approach.
The fact is that when we think holistically or systemically about what controls a market's perception of a brand, which ultimately is about attitudes, how do we feel about a brand, behaviors, how much do we buy from a brand.
Think about MP3 players, okay? I mean, you can buy a Zune, a Samsung, a Philips, or an iPod, okay? Now, maybe the Zune's cheaper, maybe it's better value, maybe it lasts longer, but the iPod's irresistible. The iPod's dripping with mystery, sensuality, intimacy.
This ability to be able to associate a product with its consumers, to be able to say, I like this consumer and this consumer likes this product, therefore I might like that product. If you make it explicit, of course it won't work, but if you build social social factors, social media, if you will, into everything you do is much greater.
And as you and I both know, I mean, the enlightened organizations of the world essentially reverse engineer their operations by defining the types of customer experiences they want to deliver in the market for the customers or segments of customers they care about.
We have basically infinite data about behavior. And the problem was that there weren't enough people looking at the data, analyzing it, thinking about it from an economics perspective.
Most marketing people spend most of their time in the business of doing business or in false situations like focus groups and so on. They don't spend enough time observing, living with consumers.
Societies are too big for you to operate just on the basis of observation. You've got to really go out and draw the statistics. You know, if you live in the big cities, you're just not going to understand how people are living out in the more rural areas anymore and how they want to change unless you're really following the numbers and the thoughts and the feelings.
You know, if you want to learn about how a lion hunts, you've got to go to the jungle, not to the zoo. If you want to learn about consumers, you've got to live with them, not put them in focus groups, and not spend time in internal meetings.
Consciously or not, we built upon the foundation of marketing, a multidimensional superstructure with the temporal, cultural, personal flair of each moment of time. Moreover, throughout modern history, marketing has increasingly become an integral part of every human exchange of goods and services, until we finally had to admit it was a process, a value-creating chain. And now, even if we don't manufacture widgets or we aren't pushing our wares to make a profit, we are engaged in marketing activities all the time.
Some people do stupid things with them, some people do amazing things with them. Sometimes we benefit from the results, sometimes we don't benefit.
I would say that they should have a love of the battle place where decisions are made and products are competing. You got to ask if you really enjoy the battle, if you want to be out there in marketing or in sales.
I think the most important change in marketing is the shift from push marketing, the lecture approach, to one where you're just stimulating word of mouth.
Why do I need to have a talking brochure sit across the table to tell me about products when I could use technology of the internet to find out all I know much more easily?
So society changes and adopts things faster, and we have the ability to make technologies real much, much faster. And that's very significant in the way we live.
We basically had a century of projecting out marketing messages, and now there's more and more messages, which means the individual messages have less and less impact, and all you can really do is catalyze bottoms-up, grassroots conversations.
That is a symptom of the fact that the person who seems to be the logical owner of the customer experience is usually the chief marketing officer, but the chief marketing officer controls just the elements of the marketing, advertising, and promotion spend, which doesn't touch the call center, doesn't touch the interactive voice response units, usually doesn't touch the sales force, doesn't touch product design, and doesn't touch anything that's actually happening.
We have to reach a point where marketing is on the board of the company as much as the CFO, Chief Financial Officer's on the board. Marketing's voice has been small in relation to the other chief players in the company, and I'd like to see it enhanced, which is now happening with the appointment of CMOs, Chief Marketing Officers.
That said, I think the toughest question then going forward is how in the world you get a bunch of functional areas within today's large-scale business corporations to work together in new ways.
I think that it's absolutely clear that the customer will become a partner in the definition of products. And so the magic will be in incorporating those ideas rapidly into what you're offering as a company is, and diffusing those to the people who don't yet have it. And that may be the role of a carrier in the future, and it may set the model for how marketing goes on.
As the discipline became expanded, economies bigger, and customers wealthier, organizations entronized marketing and marketers with the dignity of high office, leaving all the other functions and their key players under the apparent dominion of this new authority. From them on, just as it happened with Cain and Abel competing for God's approval, an unnecessary duality arose inside companies. A battle between marketing and sales, heart and soul of the same process, started. A silo war so harsh and noisy that it couldn't be ignored.
Well, I believe that we first thought that marketing is going to be handled as an adjunct to a sales department to help the salespeople get orders, so that the salespeople wouldn't have to do their own marketing research, wouldn't have to do their own search for leads, wouldn't have to write ads.
But today, sales and marketing usually talk different languages. They believe different things are important. They're often in conflict. And the CEO says, well, when I talk to my chief marketing officer, he's telling me this or this. And when I talk to my head of sales, she's telling me something different.
Oh, it's because the marketing people charge too much that I couldn't sell the product. Or the marketing people say, the salespeople aren't listening to our value proposition and they're doing anything to get a customer.
I think agencies and marketing departments still think they're in the army. It's still hierarchical, it's still command and control, it's still bureaucratic. It's not flat enough, it's not fast enough, it's not flexible enough.
But you can't just leave it to marketing. Marketing isn't close enough to individual customers to know. So more and more, sales and marketing have to work together to decide which opportunities are the winners.
Unless marketing and sales people start mingling more and aligning themselves more and reaching a point where neither blames the other if sales fall, which is an old fact, finger pointing.
We can't have sales and marketing working in a silo. So we must have revenue generating processes where marketing and sales work together.
So certainly one of the other contributing factors to the idea that chief marketing officers only have a year or two in their jobs before they're summarily shown the door has to do with the fact that on one hand, they're under pressure to show a return on investment for that marketing spend. And to Kotler's point, much of it defies any kind of rigorous measurement whatsoever.
This isn't working. And so a number of companies, for example, FedEx or Campbell's Soup or Coca-Cola Enterprises, have recently introduced the idea of a chief revenue officer who controls both sales and marketing. And that way you can be more flexible about using sales and marketing resources.
Will it carry them forever? I don't know. Nothing lasts forever. But on the other hand, they have the ability to gather good people, they have the ability to try new ideas, and they have a good firm base on which to grow.
I think that you really have to kind of look at your workforce now and say that they're not all the same. That each probably 10-year generation now has a separate set of interests that even may change. And you're going to have to take it into account. The workforce now is very varied in its goals and its cultures, and you have to understand that as an employer.
With this fight for power taking place, and each and everyone doing marketing, from bosses to partners, from governments to nonprofits, from customers to suppliers, no doubt there is a plurality with more than one sense out there, a flock with no shepherd. Now, are companies ready to willingly embrace this new reality? Or will they soon yearn for that lost paradise of absolute control over the realm of brands, markets, corporate image they used to have? To date, the written account of marketing and its descendants, one-to-one, guerrilla, viral, mobile, convergence, gathers enough evidence to think that marketing is not simply about command of the media and control of the message. No way. Somewhat, the new marketplace, whether you have faith in it or not, wipes off the narcissistic perspective of business and wipes out those underpinnings that used to make it work as the perfect alibi.
Well, I think what I really noticed is that the era of megatrends is over, and that it's no longer just about a few big trends that are out there, but that really what's happening is that people are forming smaller and smaller groups, oftentimes around 1%, and that these groups can be extremely powerful in the marketplace.
So brands became commodified. They lost confidence, they lost relevance, and they lost their premium.
I would say that any of those strong brands could stop advertising tomorrow and continue strong for a year, 2 or 3 before the lack of their presence in our mindset will start affecting them.
And ultimately, therefore, what these corporate assets called brand equity are really worth. That's the place where it's not just a story of consumer control of media, it's about consumers creating a conversation that companies can hope to influence, but they can no longer shape, command, or control. And that shift in power or control over brands.
And marketing departments need to rethink now, not about command and control, not about directing, not about selling by yelling, but about being empathetic, engaging. Frankly, you've got to give up control now of your brands and become more empathetic with consumers. Your job in marketing is to connect the brand, the idea, with the feelings of a customer.
You have to understand some of the latest techniques of micro-targeting. You have to understand how to deliver targeted messages to targeted communities. You have to just not expect products to sell themselves on the basis of innovation, because it's a far more competitive marketplace out there than it ever was.
It's what's happening in our culture and our economy as we're shifting from a hit-driven, blockbuster market to one epitomized by the internet with a million niches.
But now, it's no longer true that your biggest customer is your most profitable. It may be in the middle market your most profitable customers lie. And as we begin to find we haven't enough resources and we have to put them where they have the most impact.
We've never seen an economy before where all the input costs go down over time. They get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until on a kind of a marginal cost basis they become zero.
I think even in those mass societies that were intended for everyone to be the same, to dress the same, for there not to be differences, as soon as the rules open up a little bit, vast differences emerge, microtrends start to flourish.
This ability to have complete freedom over what you charge for, what you don't charge for, the ability to have non-monetary economies, like the blogosphere, open source, all these things are only possible in a digital economy. The new businesses, the new form of free is the one that's basically entirely the digital realm.
So, the still life of traditional marketing burst open, and more powerful consumers, with technology, both as minister and usherer, went in twos and twos onto social networks, wikis, blogs, for convenience and shelter from the flood, from the bombardment of brands, thus creating, half willingly, half reluctant, a new breed in the species of marketers.
Holy cow. I mean, if they're right, I'm so lucky. I'm in the right place at the right time. I happen to be present and understand the core enabling technology of the 21st century.
One went through pre-Facebook, one went through after Facebook, one went through pre-cell phone, one went through after cell phone, one went through before MySpace or Twitter or SMS, and another went through after.
Still completely convinced that digital technology is the most powerful force of our time.
In many ways, it is not a matter of technology now. So I don't know that the right thing to do is to think about what the next technology is. Now it's a matter of society.
In fact, there's a cycle now between seeing something on TV or reading it in the paper, responding online, and then let's say 1 million people respond, and then they report 1 million people responded, and then another 1 million people respond. And this is changing the way that we're able to market. It is not true that it's all about the new digital marketplace by itself. It's all about, I think, the unity of these two places and their ability to reach people and to let people act and move.
But you might say that we've seen a new equilibrium established, something we think of as marketing 2.0, that is about a kind of balance between supply and demand.
The most important change is information. It used to be that customers didn't know what choices they had. Well, now most customers have become very sophisticated. They can find on the internet everything they need to know about products and alternatives. And so in the past they may have heard of your product and perhaps a little bit about one competitor. Today they know about every competitor.
What puzzles me is this phenomena of Facebook and MySpace and other what we call social networks. How do you capitalize on that? Because the people who are on these social networks did not want advertising. They wanted to communicate with their friends.
And that's what micro-targeting is all about, making communications ultimately more efficient.
Marketing 2.0 has had to wrestle with the fact that companies and brands are sharing power with consumers. And in the retail channel, it's the best illustration of all, in that anyone close to the consumer has more power than anyone else far away.
At the moment, most brands are trying to control them and are being manipulative. That's got to change because the consumer's boss, not the brand. What brands have got to learn is not to be frightened of the bloggers, not to be frightened of the community sites, but to welcome them and to listen to them and to work with them.
Marketing has lived over 100 years and spread widely in its own likeness, in his own image. Now, as the barriers between organizations and customers crumble, as new social technologies facilitate instant exchanges among groups of people, we may feel tempted to believe that we have left it behind the door, neatly encased in a job description, in an advertising agency, a promotion firm, a packaging designer.
Of course, very few things really die in the social or economic world. They used to say, our newspaper's dead and through, is radio finished by TV, is advertising finished?
So one of my clients once said to me, one of the most brilliant people, says, look, I'm standing in front of a door without a key. And so what clients want is the key to open the door. And with these kind of clients, we try to help them find the key that they're looking for.
I think the big changes that you're seeing is the question of control. Who has control? Is it the brand? Is it the retailer? Is it the media? Or is it the consumer? My belief is now consumer's boss, and that's a huge change.
It's now a new challenge in marketing in which the consumer has most, if not all, the power. The consumer is now dictating to companies how they should go to market. The consumer is actually constructing go-to-market systems for themselves in terms of how they want to relate to brands, to underlying products and services. And that, I would argue, is the new challenge for every marketer.
And to me, the traits are creativity, very important, and a discipline of with scientific basis to it. So the combination of being both scientific and creative, it would be a wonderful set of aptitudes for new marketers.
I have strong belief that the further down the decision chain we can make decision making, the faster they will adapt. Because kids coming into advertising and marketing today, they are already living in this world. They're already digital, they're already virtual, they're already connected.
And this is the most important, is will we be able, by providing such enabling technologies to really change the world, will that generation of children who grow up with communications and creativity in the palm of their hands that they own, will they suddenly change the world? Will they elevate their place in the world? Will they be able to make the world a more peaceful and friendly place? Will they be able to make it be a global society rather than a local society?
So the answer is the heart and soul of it, the original strategy practice, is alive and well, but it gave rise, in a sense, to our own multi-channel system.
I think that is a significant change in the human state. And we were very early workers in that change. We were very early predictors of what that future would be, and that future has not yet arrived.
The practice and science of trading, the glamorous catwalk of brands, the creative industry of advertising, the black magic of promotions, or the craft and art of selling. Omnipresent 7 times over, marketing is one of those business terms that will never be too far removed from our everyday life. So, now that this show on marketing comes to an end, stop and think again on that ethereal, maybe whimsical statement that whatever you do for a living, you are doing marketing.